Welcome to the Taste Test channel, and this week we'll be taking an impartial look at popular Bolognese sauces from around the world to discover what the differences are and how some of the best-selling varieties around the globe differ in taste. As always, just for fun, we'll be awarding our Taste Test channel Best in Class award to the winner. If you're new to the channel, just hit the subscribe button to ensure you don't miss out on any of our regular taste tests. So Bolognese sauce, known in Italy as Ragu alla Bolognese, originated centuries ago in Bologna in Italy. It was a meat-based sauce served with pasta, but ironically it didn't contain tomatoes or herbs, instead including broth, wine and sometimes even milk. Nevertheless, the meat, tomato and herb-based Bolognese sauce we know and love today sells all over the world, and in this week's video we'll be looking at just how much or little some of the best-selling brands in the world differ in taste. Traditionally, the sauces started with a sofrito, which is finely diced celery, carrots and onions, but the choice of oils and fat, the proportion and quality of tomatoes, the mix of herbs or addition of wine means that the flavours have the potential to vary substantially, so I'm really interested to see what the differences are. So our lineup of Bolognese sauces from around the world this week is as follows: Ragu, Dolmio, Barilla, Napolina, Loyd Grossman, and finally Sacla. Price-wise, these all fall into a similar affordable price range, although the cost to get hold of them may of course differ depending on where you're based. The amount of sauce in each jar varies, but you can see the price that I paid is shown below. Nutritional-wise, being largely tomato-based, these are fairly healthy sauces. It all depends of course what you're adding to them, but here are the 4 key groups we always stick to on the Taste Test channel, which is energy, fat, sugar and salt. The chart below lists the brands from top to bottom in energy content per 100 grams. As you can see, Sacla has the most energy, followed by Barilla, with Dolmio and Ragu containing the least. Fat content has a similar outcome, with Barilla and Sacla containing the most fat, and Ragu and Dolmio again containing the least. It's a different situation, however, with sugar, with Loyd Grossman containing the most sugar, followed by Ragu, and Sacla containing the least by some margin. Finally, salt is similar on all of them, but Barilla contains the most salt and Napolina contains the least. But how will all this affect the taste? Well, that's why we're here. So our first Bolognese sauce is the well-known Italian-American brand Ragu. Ragu was started in 1937 by an Italian couple who'd moved to New York and started selling homemade tomato sauce in jars from their front porch. Their first factory followed 7 years later, and today Ragu is sold on a giant scale all over the world. Tomato content is an impressive 82% plus 5% puree, so I'm really interested to see just how tomatoey this tastes. So what we're going to do is open all the jars first so we can compare them visually side by side, and then we'll move on to the tasting. So we'll open up the jar. So quite a smooth and runny looking sauce, not many lumps in there, but I'm getting a very strong smell of freshly cut herbs, lots of high notes of basil and marjoram, and you can see the herbs go right throughout the sauce. Next up we have the multinational brand Dolmio, which is owned by Mars Foods. Dolmio started in 1986 after being test launched in Australia as Allura spaghetti sauce. It then moved to the UK, changed its name to Dolmio and now sells worldwide. Tomato content is again an impressive 78% plus 10% tomato paste. So we'll open the jar. So this is a thicker looking sauce than the last one, with a few more lumps in there. It has a much more subtle aroma though, sort of a medium herbiness and a sweet ketchup smell coming through. Next up we have Barilla Bolognese sauce. Barilla started as a bread and pasta shop in Parma, Italy as long ago as 1877. Today they produce a worldwide range of pasta and bakery products, and the company's still family run. The group seem to have a good focus on nutrition and values, most notably with their decision to remove all palm oil from their products in 2016. Tomato content is 41% plus 14% concentrate, all of which comes from Italian tomatoes. So we'll open the jar. So this has a medium thick, sort of glossy consistency, falling somewhere between the last two. You can see a lot of small diced veg in there, and the aroma is quite different. There's a rich roasted smell. If I didn't know better, I'd say a beefiness, but it's probably from caramelised veg. It's very nice though. Next up we have Napolina Bolognese sauce, which is UK based but sold across the world. The Napolina brand was established in Naples and then launched in the UK in 1965. Their tomatoes are grown by local farmers in the south of Italy in an area which enjoys around 2,500 hours of sunshine every year, so I'm really interested to see how this impacts the flavour of the sauce. Tomato content is 53% plus 17% puree, and the sauce contains extra virgin olive oil. So we'll open the jar. So this looks like a very thick tomato pulp with some glossy oiliness, and the aroma is also a strong smell of condensed tomato puree, along with a hint of herbs. Next up we have Loyd Grossman, the most successful UK celebrity sauce brand. It was created in 1995 by American-British TV personality and food critic Loyd Grossman, who's most known for presenting MasterChef and Through the Keyhole. Manufactured by Premier Foods in the UK, they use Mediterranean tomatoes, red wine and extra virgin olive oil. Considering this is created by a food critic, I'm really curious to see how this sauce compares to the others. Tomato content is 43% plus paste. So we'll open the jar. So this looks like a mixture of textures. You've got a thick and glossy sauce along with lumps of vegetable and tomato. The aroma is like you're cooking a bolognese right here. You can smell wine, herbs, tomato and veg. It smells like it's full of flavour. Finally we have Sacla Bolognese Sauce, which is an Italian brand that's sold all over the world. Sacla started with humble beginnings in 1939 in Piedmont, Italy, and it's still family run today, producing a wide range of pasta sauces and pestos using traditional recipes. This particular sauce markets itself as vegan, but I can't see anything in the ingredients of the others which suggests that they wouldn't also be. Tomato content is 58%, and interestingly this variety also contains 5% pea puree, so I'm curious to see how it compares. So we'll open the jar. So this looks very different from the rest, both in colour and texture. It's a lot more orange looking, and the texture is pulpy and a glossy oil, almost like there's breadcrumbs in there, which I assume is the pea puree influence. The aroma is very earthy, like pumpkins or squash. In fact, it smells like a jar of vegetable baby food. Not unpleasant, just very different. Okay, so now to serve them out ready for the tasting. So I'm going to need a nice heated pot of Ragu, Dolmio, Barilla, Napolina, Loyd Grossman and Sacla. So looking at them side by side, you can see there's quite a bit of variation, both in colour and texture, with Sacla standing out on its own as the most different. Ragu looks the most liquid, with Dolmio and Napolina looking like thicker sauces and Barilla somewhere in between. Loyd Grossman also looks quite thick and has quite a lot of chunks of vegetable in there. But in order to know how they taste, we're going to need some pasta. And now that we have our pasta, let's move on to the tasting. So we'll start off with the Ragu. Okay, so the flavour is immediately very herby, also with a lemony kick. It's sweet, but it's balanced by the acidic sharpness of the lemon. The texture's runny, there's no real lumps of vegetables in there, and there's a long and strong aftertaste. Overall, it's very nice. If you were using this in a bolognese, it would add lots of herbiness, and you wouldn't need to add more. It would also work really well as a base sauce for a pizza. So next we'll try Dolmio. So not as much flavour in this one. The taste is more like a mild sweet ketchup, although it's not too sweet. The texture has some small chunks of vegetables, but although it has a high tomato content, it doesn't really pack a massive punch of flavour, and the herbs are subtle. Not a lot of aftertaste either. Overall, it's quite ketchup-y. It's perfectly good, but if you were using it for a bolognese, you'd probably want to add extra things like lemon and herbs and wine and so on. So next we'll try Barilla. So quite a different taste to this one. There's an immediate richness to it, like a good beef stock, although there's no beef in there, by the way. The texture has lots of very finely diced veg and there's a subtle herby undertaste. It's not particularly sweet, it's more of a roasted onion and garlic flavour and also aftertaste. Overall, this is very nice. It has a heartiness to it, which suggests that the vegetables have been roasted or caramelised to maximise flavour. It would lend itself very well to making a fine bolognese. And next up is Napolina. So immediately, very tomatoey this one, like a concentrated tomato puree. The texture is also puree-ish, slightly granular like a paste or porridge, and no lumps of vegetables as such. It's quite sweet, but there's also a strong zingy acidity of red wine or vinegar with a subtle herb aftertaste. Overall, it's very punchy in a tomato puree way, but fairly one-dimensional. You'd need to add plenty of vegetables to make the most of it, but if you're after a strong tomato kick, this would be great. Next up is Loyd Grossman. Okay, so lots of flavours going on in this one. I can taste vegetables, tomatoes, onion, wine, herbs and garlic. It's quite sweet, but there's also a zingy lemon kick to it, so it's well balanced. And there's an aftertaste of black pepper. The texture of the vegetables are al dente and the pieces are big enough to still add a distinct flavour. Overall, this is really nice and full of multi-dimensions. It's not as tomato based as the others and you wouldn't need to add pepper, but it's got everything you'd want to taste in a bolognese in one jar. Very nice indeed. Finally, we'll be tasting Sacla. So it looked different and it tastes very different too. There's an earthy flavour to it of pulses, lentils or split peas. The texture and feel is also pulsy. There's no separate vegetable pieces in there. Again, it's a bit like a blitzed up jar of baby food, which is how it smelt. It's more savoury than sweet and it's not very tomatoey. Overall, it's very different. It's not at all unpleasant, but it's overwhelmingly lentily and it tastes and feels more like a pesto. So personally, I would choose to have it alone as a pasta sauce, as opposed to using it for a bolognese. So that covers how they all differ in taste, and just to summarise, I would say that all of these are perfectly good sauces in their own right, and I wouldn't describe any of them as unpleasant. It all comes down to personal taste, and hopefully you can pick your bolognese sauce of choice based on the flavour descriptions I've given. But now that we've tasted them all, as always, just for fun, we award our Taste Test Channel winners and Best in Class award. So winning third place with a tangy tomato and herb punch that's full of zing, we have Ragu. Winning second place with a rich and hearty flavour that would definitely add dimension to any dish, Barilla. But first place this week in the Bolognese sauces from around the world, the Taste Test Channel Best in Class award goes to Loyd Grossman, full of complex and multi-dimensional flavours and textures and ticking the boxes of everything you need in a really good bolognese. Well done to Loyd Grossman. And as always, taste is subjective and this is purely my point of view, but I hope this has provided some useful insights. So I've certainly enjoyed making this episode and I really hope you've enjoyed watching it, and if you have, please do consider sharing it with others and don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell to ensure you don't miss out on any of our regular taste tests. And just a note, as always, to thank everyone who supports the channel. You really do make all the difference. We're not sponsored by the brands that we feature, and each video takes 6 to 8 days to make, so a massive, massive extra thank you to the particularly generous viewers who support us via Patreon. You keep us going, and we are eternally grateful. As always, please do comment and let us know what food or drink items you'd like to see on some of our forthcoming Taste Test episodes. Meanwhile, I'm off to make a bolognese for about 100 people, so thanks for watching and ciao!